Well, I have areas of optimism and pessimism. On the optimistic side, I think it is very likely that the two parties will come back together for talks. We don't know exactly when that would happen. We don't know even where they would happen. But it does seem that both sides are preserving the option for negotiations, Tehran even taking some steps to avoid escalation in the current blockade. Where I'm pessimistic on is the odds of reaching a lasting and comprehensive deal that really brings normalcy back to the region, and in particular to the Strait of Hormuz. The two sides remain far apart on a number of key elements, including what happens to Hormuz after the war. But it's also important to note that these talks are just the U.S. and Iran. Israel, which is another party to the conflict, does not seem to still be a direct member of the talks. And its conflict in Lebanon is an important area of consideration for Tehran, which wants that to end before it agrees to any lasting ceasefire. So I think markets are betting on a deal that would be full and comprehensive, but that may not be what we get, even if talks were to happen.
And Jen, I guess one of the big sticking issues is the Strait of Hormuz, as you mentioned. And some of the experts we've talked to said, you only secure that thing if Iran agrees to secure it. Because that genie's out of the bottle, that genie being, hey, everybody's used the strait for free and unfettered access and trade. That's no longer the case. How do you deal with that?
That's absolutely right. And I think that's one of the challenges the U.S. has faced over the last 7 weeks of this conflict is you cannot really militarily alone reopen the strait. You can do things like escorts, you can do things like the blockade to try and secure it, but there is going to be that perennial threat of Iranian attacks on ships, and that will always have a constraint on how much tankers are willing to take those risks and flow back through the strait. So going into these talks, it seems that the U.S. might be open to some sort of joint tolling venture with Iran that could lead to a reopening of the strait, but that's not a return to the pre-war norm. And I think it still leaves a lot of questions on the table for the global shipping industry and for other oil producers in the region.
And oil importers as well, Jen. I want to get your take on what this means for China, because the president had delayed his summit with Xi Jinping of China until May because of the ongoing war in Iran. But now that you have the Strait of Hormuz not being accessible, that kind of throws a monkey wrench in the works there.
Yeah, absolutely. China to date has weathered the war better than a lot of other energy-dependent economies, in part because Iran was still exporting through the strait, even when everybody else wasn't, and China was willing to take those barrels in. If Iranian oil isn't getting out, that's going to be a hit to China's imports at the moment where it's already having to draw on its reserves. Beijing's been careful in the last few days, but it's clear that it's unhappy about the situation, and I think we are very likely to see the longer this blockade lasts, the greater the odds that there will be some sort of decision point where a Chinese-linked ship attempts to challenge the blockade, and the U.S. is going to have to make the decision on whether or not to turn it back. And if it does, there's real cards that Beijing could play here to try and push the United States to allow an exemption, including playing that critical minerals card we saw them play so well last year.